My name is Victoria Fernandes, and I'm a researcher here at Imperial College, and I'll be your host for today. And so the event of today, we're talking about engineering, especially celebrating women in engineering. And engineering is a very exciting field that probably offers one of the largest range of exciting career opportunities. Today, when we're talking about engineering, we're thinking about it in quite broad terms. So engineering as a way of applying scientific and mathematical knowledge to create solutions to the world's problems. So anything from geoengineering to civil engineering, mechanical engineering, anything that we're thinking about solving a problem creatively using both maths and science. Today's event will be focusing on our engineering heroes. So we'll be showcasing our students here at the Department of Earth Science and Engineering. We want to hear more about their career paths, their career choices, their aspirations and their experiences in getting to where they are now. And hopefully you'll be able to identify with them, ask them questions, and have a bit more understanding of what it's like to pursue a career in engineering. So for now, I guess we'll just start off with our panel, and I would like to introduce our panelists, and everyone on this panel is at a different level of their career. So everyone from a first year undergraduate to master's students. So I'll just invite everyone to please introduce yourselves, talk about what year of study are you in, what are you studying, and in a few words, if you could tell us why you chose your career path and what you like the most about it. So if we please could start with Nicole.
Hi, I'm Nicole, and I am a final year BSc student studying geology within the department. I chose the subject because I've always had an interest in the natural world and sort of understanding Earth's processes. And the favourite part of geology is really that it's so broad, and I didn't have to give up any of sort of my other interests within science like chemistry, physics, biology, maths. I can combine them all and relate them all to the Earth. So it's a great subject to study if you're interested in lots of different things.
Yeah, I'm Natasha. I'm a first year geophysics student of my undergraduate degree. I chose the subject for sort of similar reasons to Nicole. I really enjoyed my A-levels, which were maths, chemistry and physics, and it enabled me to combine all of them, sort of focusing more in on the physics side, and allowing me to sort of apply it to the world and around us and like other planets, which is really interesting and cool.
My name is Nihal Darraj. I'm doing my master's at Imperial College studying petroleum engineering. So why did I join? I'm obviously an international student. I'm from the Middle East, and I chose Imperial because it's one of the best universities in the world. And I also come from an industry background. I worked after graduation for 6 years, and then I decided to come back and study and learn more because I wanted more. I love the field, and it stimulates my interest, and I'm very passionate about it. And yeah, this is why I'm at Imperial.
Hi everyone, I'm Teigan. I'm on my 3rd year of the MSci Geology in the department. I've always had an interest in as Nicole said, the natural world, and really enjoyed my A-levels prior to uni, maths, geography and chemistry. And I'm quite an outdoors person. I do like being inside, so the opportunities that come with the fieldwork in the department was such like an exciting thing to get involved with, and just being able to sort of use everything and the ever-changing aspects of like geology and the geosciences makes it really great to study geology in the department.
Thank you. So I think what we'll now be asking each and every one of you is, what does your sort of day-to-day look like? Perhaps if some of you could say, if you have an experience pre-pandemic of the department, maybe tell us a bit more about that. And perhaps Nihal, if you could tell us even a bit more about your experience in industry, that would be I think, a really great addition. So maybe if we can start with Nihal.
Yeah, sure. So my day to day, I worked for a consultancy, right? So I did lots of traveling. I worked with companies in UAE, which is ADNOC. Worked with Saudi Aramco and Saudi, and I worked with lots of companies in Houston, Texas, and like USA. So it was like traveling all the time, attending meetings, attending I don't know, like lots of conferences, writing papers, and within between all this, I would like sit and do the technical work and check with my boss. And so yeah, if you like traveling, I think might be the job for you. And if you like solving problems, this also might be the thing for you, because every part of the world is different. Even if the type of the rock, for example, is the same, you will encounter different problems. So yeah, it was really fun just getting to the nitty-gritty details and just trying to solve different problems around the world that might actually look similar, but they are very different.
That's amazing. So, engineering's a really fantastic opportunity to travel around and solve different problems in different places. What about you, Teigan? What's your day-to-day been like? How has it changed perhaps from school throughout your undergraduate now to your third year?
Yeah, so I guess thinking back to school, you very much had a lot less freedom in terms of what you could get involved with compared to university. So a typical day on campus, 18 months ago now, it would involve a 9 to 12 lecture and then a 2 to 5 on most days. And I think such a good thing about engineering in the department is the people you surround yourself with. So we've got people that are involved in like the NASA Perseverance mission, and you can just, compared to school, you can interact with these people on your lunch break, passing by in the corridor. So like on your day-to-day experiences, you're exposing yourself to things which perhaps you didn't know you were so interested in, and then can become something you're quite passionate in the future.
Oh, thanks. That's really great. What about you, Natasha? How has your has it changed much, I guess, from school, being as a first year that's been in the department over the pandemic? What's it been like?
It's been different to school because it's been online, so sort of any school would be different. I sort of on average have like 3 hours lectures a day, and then we have pre-recorded on top of that, so it's sort of less time, but it's more work to catch up and do prep for. But it's just really interesting, and whilst you haven't been able to be in person, it's definitely been good because you've had Zoom calls like this, and we get to chat and work through practicals together with other people, which is quite good.
Thanks. So yeah, I guess this sort of joint learning must have been a sort of new experience, different from school, where you work through problems together with your peers, and it's less so about necessarily just your individual work. What about sort of the favourite thing that you've learned so far in your degree? Nicole, how about you tell us about what's been the most exciting or interesting thing that you've learned so far?
I think for me, actually, it was having the opportunity to work on a real research project over the summer. After my first year, I was really keen on sort of getting into doing some proper science, and having the opportunity within the department to do that as a part of a kind of program that they offer. I spent the summer working on some real research and contributing to science myself, which I thought was fantastic. As an undergraduate, it really made me excited about my career in the future and sort of being in science in general and discovering things that maybe nobody else has thought about, applying kind of things I've learned in lectures to actually sort of real research.
Oh, thank you. That's really great to hear. What about you, Nihal? What's the most interesting thing you've learned so far? Or done so far, I guess.
Well, in the UK, the master's is basically 1 year, so it's quite intense. So I had to learn lots of things because my background is actually not petroleum engineering, it's natural gas and petrochemicals engineering, so I had to learn a lot. I've worked in a certain area that is multidisciplinary, so I can like work in few things but not know the whole thing about this the things that are surrounding it, right? So at Imperial I got the opportunity to like dig deeper and just, you know, learn a lot about each individual subject and just learned how to connect the dots better. So yeah, that was quite exciting for me.
Thank you. That's really, really interesting. It's great to hear that you know, even someone from a sort of petrochemical engineering background is able to, you know, just transfer to a petroleum engineering master's. You know, it shows you how diverse and how, you know, engineering is a great subject that broadens your perspectives and horizons for what you can do. What about Teigan? What's the most interesting or coolest thing you've done or learned so far?
I would say some of the most sort of like the things I hear and learn that make me step back and think, wow, I guess you could be learning in like high temp geochemistry, for example, the formation of like the constituents of an atom, the tiniest things in the universe, and then in the afternoon you could be going and learning about solar systems in a whole and how like the scales just jump from one to another and like all encompassing of everything around you that you just learn on a day-to-day basis. And also sort of the fieldwork aspect, being able to amalgamate all the things you've learned from first year, second year, all builds up. And then I guess reflecting on Spain, our field trip that the geologists and geophysicists will go on in the first year, being able to sort of see things in real life that you've seen on paper, I guess that's quite a cool thing. That, I mean, I didn't do geology at A-level, so even being surrounded by people that did do geology, you do pick up things, and it's like being able to understand a history from just a rock that some people wouldn't consider meaningful in the way that you do after learning everything.
That's really fantastic. Thank you, Teigan. I guess it sort of really highlights as well how practical engineering is. You know, it's not just the kind of subject that you go and you sit in a classroom and learn about it and it ends there. You know, you can really transfer your knowledge from the theoretical world to the real world. So it's a very practical thing to do. So what, you know, just moving on to the next question, what would you say is the thing that excites you most about your career in the future? You know, your sort of career prospects. How do you see a career in engineering going? Are you thinking about staying in research? What about changing from research to industry, fields in industry? Perhaps starting off with Natasha.
I'm very early on my degree, so there's still like so many possibilities like in the future. I think I want to like research placements to further understand like the active science and get involved with that. But equally, there's still so many careers out there, even within the field. You have the very stereotypical oil and gas industry, but you also have climate change and research, and it's such a broad area that I think I'm just looking forward to sort of discovering different areas that I don't even know now that could be career possibilities.
Thank you. Teigan?
Yeah, I'm quite keen to stay in the research realm. I'm excited to embark on my ESE project in the autumn term. So I'm lucky enough to do that with the Natural History Museum, and looking at how sedimentation and reef environments are changing over time and depending on seasons. So I think looking forward, I'm definitely interested in remaining in that sort of area, and how not only we can learn about the past, but also use it to inform what we know about in the future. So I guess it does have a lab aspect, which is something that we haven't had the chance to get around to in our undergrad, which is quite exciting. So yeah, definitely, I think research, not quite industry yet, or maybe I'll get some sort of experience there and perhaps change in the future.
Thank you, Teigan. Yes, I mean, a research career can definitely be extremely exciting. You get to work on sort of a very wide range of problems in a sort of very sort of theoretical, but also practical point of view. Perhaps, Nihal, you might be able to give us some more, you know, insight as someone who has gone to industry and has come back to education. You know, what are you excited about in your career for the future?
Yeah, can I have a third answer?
Of course.
Yeah, so something else is actually policy and strategy. You know, with the net zero targets and all these things, you need to incorporate the policies and strategies in each place that you work in, and how would you reach this net zero targets at the end of the day. So I've been very, happy to work with the United Nations, UNECE, for the past, I'd say, 5 months on a project on the decarbonization of the energy intensive industries. And it's quite interesting for me, just looking from the technical side as an engineer, and how to make this like very simple and understandable, so when someone from the cabinet can actually read it and look into it and understand what they need to do. So that kind of trade-off, I would say, between the technical knowledge as an engineer and seeing what happens when you look at it from the policy and strategy point of view and the policymakers' point of view was also quite interesting for me. So maybe pursue something like that, or maybe like do the research while you incorporate both point of views, which is what I'm doing now in my MSc thesis. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nihal. That's a really fantastic perspective. I guess it's the people work in industry, you can work in research, and I guess you can work in policy. Actually communicating the science and engineering results from the research world or the industry world into what people understand, both in terms of the policy, but also, I guess, science communication. How do you communicate research findings to the public? Something that I think the sort of global pandemic has really highlighted, the importance of effective communication of scientific results. Perhaps, Nicole, do you have, would you like to add anything? What's, what excites you about the future and your career? Or have we?
Yeah, I think my sort of career aims are probably quite similar to Teigan, actually, and that I find research itself really exciting, because you're contributing to sort of, in some cases, things that people haven't necessarily done before, or contributing to understanding kind of a really big topic at the start, where you get sort of a project and you think, wow, all these ideas sort of come to you and you think, well, what can I do to sort this out? What can I do to solve it? And sort of applying the things that I've learned throughout my degree towards actually ending up, maybe doing a PhD and contributing to scientific literature in the form of published work. I think that's what kind of most excites me about my career.
Thank you. No, that is really fantastic. I guess, engineering or science in general is a very creative industry, which a lot of people don't really associate it. I think I definitely didn't. As at school age, I thought science was there and done. There was, I could do maths because maths was clean and very rigorous and there was no questions about it. But actually, getting into research, it really does show that there's a whole range of things, that unanswered questions, and that we need to go and find creative solutions for. So I think a sort of related question, thinking about the very big picture, which I guess, Nicole, you could, just carry on. What is your sort of career goal? You know, what would you like to achieve kind of as someone pursuing a career in STEM?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of in my final year of my BSc degree now, so I am hoping to continue on and do a master's, and then hopefully be starting a PhD the following year, hopefully if everything goes well. And I think for me, you know, obviously kind of that 4 years or whatever doing my PhD is something that I'm really looking forward to, and definitely sort of the entry to what I hope will be a career in kind of academia and research, and sort of working on various different science projects and sort of contributing to them. I think that's my sort of career aspirations, is to sort of end up in research and end up working on some pretty interesting stuff and actually contributing to science as a field in general.
Oh, thank you. That's really inspiring to hear. How about you, Nihal? I guess.
Yeah, so my answer is a bit unorthodox. What I want to do throughout my career, I want to leave a legacy, actually. In all aspects, I want to help people to be better leaders and just to contribute to the advancement of people and women, between brackets, within the engineering career. And of course, work on myself and be the best person that I can be, and learn a lot, because you can never stop learning and you can never stop giving. Yeah, that's my career aspiration.
Thank you. How about you, Teigan?
Yeah, I would say similar to sort of what Nicole's answer was, continuing in research, and I'm quite keen to sort of to get out and collect samples to do research on, so to have the opportunity to do things like that, and be part of sort of an active network of collaborators all doing something new. I think that sort of environment of positive sharing of data and all collaborating on to solve the problems that arise in engineering. Yeah, and similar to Nihal, never stop learning. There is no limit. If you're doing research, where do the questions stop? How do you conclude your research, or are we constantly passing on to lower generations to continue solving these global problems?
Thank you, Teigan. It's all very, very inspirational. How about you, Natasha? I guess very early on in your degree, but it's never too early, I guess, to have big aspirations or career goals.
Yeah, I think my career goals are sort of just to follow my interests, so that will develop and change. Like when I was younger, I always thought I'd be doing music in university, and I think interests change over time, and that's where my career goals are, just to follow that and to do my best in whatever field I try, because I think you've just got to constantly be open-minded. That's sort of what science is, because you may have so many theories that you believe are to be proven, but there could be just a different perspective that completely changes it. It's being open-minded with a future, and just trying my hardest. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much, Natasha. So perhaps the next question I'd like to pose to the panelists, not necessarily aimed at anyone specific, but you know, we've talked a bit about your career aspirations, what excites you in your career in the future, where you might be going, but what other, you know, perhaps different careers that you could pursue, you know, after you graduate? I guess it's important, you know, us as being in a university environment, we get exposed to different people following different careers. We've talked about going into policy, going into research. Nihal, you've actually worked in industry as an engineer. Anyone else has any other sort of exciting career opportunities for engineers out there? Perhaps Nihal, do you have any other ideas you might like to add?
Yeah, so actually I do have some ideas. So I'll give you two examples. One of them is the Society of Petroleum Engineers CEO. He's a petroleum engineer, and he is an NGO CEO. So a different type of managerial, and he's providing like all the platforms for the petroleum engineering. He actually knows what are the hot topics because he himself is a petroleum engineer. One other petroleum engineer I know went off and started a magazine called Oil and Gas Magazine. He has topics about like all the new things, all the treaties, and like everything in the oil and gas industry. So there are like a lot of things that you can actually do, and you don't know what they are until you experience yourself. You just go out there and see what you can do. So, for example, for me personally, when I started with the United Nations, they just gave me this document, and I looked at it and I thought, no, I cannot do that. But then they kind of eased me in. They said, like, okay, do a poster or something with the engineering flow chart, and I did that. And they said, see, the policymaker would understand this, but not this. So don't put, for example, chemical equation, but just tell him what's happening. So I guess my point is, at the end, you can literally do anything you want to do. If you love writing, start a magazine. If you are really good in talking to people, you could be a manager. Just like put yourself out there and just be open for opportunities. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nihal. And on the topic of careers, we've got a question from the Q&A aimed at Teigan and Nicole. Are you also interested in teaching in your future careers, or just staying within research? So perhaps starting off with Teigan.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that I've considered at this level of my career, but it's something that I'm not completely against. I think teaching, for me personally, would require building up sort of my public speaking and addressing larger groups of people and getting things across clearly and coherently. But I guess with a passion that you want to share with others, I think teaching, even if it's a small amount, would definitely be something beneficial to a lot of other people as well as myself. But yeah, definitely not something I've said yes or no to internally, but something I might consider in the future, yeah.
Thank you. How about you, Nicole?
And I think for me personally, science and communication sort of, and including teaching, is possibly one of the most important aspects of science in general, and that is because, you know, there's lots of interesting research projects going on and so much, you know, fascinating information that's being kind of learned and you know, experiments being done, and you know, but if we can't communicate those to the wider public, then, you know, I feel like that's a shame that people don't actually hear about these, you know, unless we communicate them. And being good at SciComm and sort of teaching in general is definitely something that I'm quite passionate about, and that, you know, I definitely see as part of my future career going forwards, even if, you know, and I hope I do manage to stay in research and get that sort of aspect as well. But I think being able to communicate the research that I'm doing to, whether that's to a group of students or whether that is to the public, I think that is so important, and definitely a kind of mark of, you know, in my opinion anyway, the mark of a good researcher is being able to communicate it effectively.
Thank you very much. As just a sort of additional thing, you know, at Imperial College, you know, you can, even as an undergrad, I think at your if you're staying on for an MSci, there's definitely sort of teaching opportunities that you can get involved with teaching as a fourth year, teaching first years. So it's a really fantastic thing that, you know, at least at Imperial College, there's definitely opportunity for you to get on board with, you know, teaching and communicating your science even within your undergraduate degree. Another question that has come in through the Q&A that I'll pose to everyone, all the panelists, is, generally speaking, do you find the largest scale of engineering, such as systems, for example, geothermal energy extraction, or the theoretical side, for example, thermodynamics of sand and soil plasticity? I guess this is find more interesting. whether you find the larger scale engineering more interesting or smaller scale more interesting. Perhaps Natasha, might you want to chat about your experiences in studying, like whether you find more interesting studying the small scale or the larger scale?
I'm not sure which I find more interesting. I think they're actually really interlinked in a way, because the large scale systems are so affected by the small scale effects. Like, for example, I think the climate system, you have the little tweaks in just the way everything works can have a massive impact. And so I think it's all just really interesting, because I think it's hard to exclude the large scale systems and the small scale. I also think there's different aspects. So the chemistry can be really interesting, or the physics, which you look at quite close to, like how atoms behave, or the elemental composition of rocks. But equally, the rock composition and the dynamics of the Earth, I think it's all just very interesting. I can't say which is more so, to be honest.
I guess it can be hard to decide if you don't have a personal preference set just yet. How about you, Teigan? Do you have any preferences, small scale or larger scale phenomena?
I'd say I'm quite interested in the large scale. For example, as Natasha mentioned, the climate system. I do think a lot of the problems in engineering that arise probably are questions looking at the larger system, and it's a problem or using your creativity to piece together the smaller systems to make sense of how the larger systems are changing and what the impacts of that are. I think, again, the larger systems are quite relatable when you're speaking to non-geoscientists. They're more likely to understand and converse with you about sort of the effects of climate change. But then if you were to go into a specific cycle, it's a bit more difficult to maintain this conversation with people that aren't as well informed as, say, people that have studied it. So I do think that the larger might be swayed for me, but definitely both sides are very interesting.
That's a very interesting perspective, for sort of coming at it from a science communication perspective. We've just received another question in the Q&A. So if we sort of move on to, do you have to do fieldwork in earth science and engineering? Perhaps, Nihal, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. By fieldwork, you mean like throughout your study or after, as a career?
I guess it could apply to both.
Okay, so I think it's really important just to tie what you learn at school with the practical phase of the industry, right? You have to see, like, for example, if I said drilling rig, you need to see that to be able to connect the dots, right? So I think it's quite helpful to do that field work within the years of study. I think it's essential, actually. When it comes to a career, no, it's not. You can be based in the office, or you can be based in the field, or you can actually do a little bit of both. You can be based in the office and have frequent visits to the field, or vice versa. So yeah, it's it all depends on what kind of a job you land.
Yeah, that is entirely true. I mean, I definitely did a lot of fieldwork in my undergraduate degree, but and went on to do a PhD in an entirely computational field where I could do everything from bed if I wanted to. So it is indeed, Nihal, as you said, very dependent on what job you land, what field you go into. And so I would like to pose a question to each of the panelists. I think this could be perhaps interesting. Have you had any topic or specific subject that you learned in school that at the time you thought you'd never ever have to use it again or think about again, that has come back throughout your career as an engineer thinking, this is why I've learned this in school. So perhaps Natasha?
I can't think of anything. I think a lot of my sciences were relevant. The only thing I'd probably say is sort of more of my geography modules, because I didn't do geography for year 9, and I sort of had just assumed I've sort of finished with all my geography there at that point, and then sort of clearly I've done geophysics, which is very much related to the world and more the physical side of geography, and so that information, which I certainly thought I wouldn't encounter again, has cropped up, and that interest has developed since I clearly didn't take the topic, but that's definitely a subject that cropped up that I wasn't expecting necessarily.
How about you, Nicole?
Yeah, I think for me, it was actually maths. I always struggled a little bit with maths, and that it wasn't necessarily my absolute favourite thing, because I found it quite abstract. And maths at school, I found it sort of difficult to relate what I was learning, and I was sort of sitting there kind of doing maths problems, and I'm thinking, what am I getting at here, other than actually doing the maths problems and sort of sitting the exams and stuff like that. And I think actually when I kind of started my degree, I realised that actually, maths is incredibly important, and I've always sort of been I kind of enjoyed it in the sense that I was never sort of struggled so much in kind of understanding it. I just never saw sort of how it related together. But with sort of geoscience in general, it's so relevant, but in a different way in that it lets me use it and see the relevance for what I'm using, and what I've learned at school, and applying that actually doing sort of problems and research, and seeing how it relates to kind of the earth in general, and realizing that actually, I can do this, and this is why I was learning it. And I think that's definitely kind of testament for anyone that may be listening, that definitely maybe they don't love maths, but they love science, because that was definitely me. And sort of you'll get there with science, get there with maths, and you'll understand why it's so important when you can actually use it practically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that is fantastic. I think a lot of people can probably relate to that feeling of loving science, but not really having that much interest in maths. How about you, Teigan?
Yeah, I would say all 3 of my subjects, the content of them is pretty useful in all of the modules that currently have done in the past and are doing in the future. But I would say more the mindset of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So for example, at school, I'd be doing geography and I'd be being told to explain why it happens, and then it would just be for to gain marks in an exam. But since coming to uni, it's like I want to understand why this is happening, and then you're seeing the real world implications of understanding the science and the processes behind a system, for example. And as Nicole said, maths, at school it was just sort of going through questions to get marks again, but now it's learning to apply different pieces together. And I definitely would say the major change is the mindset of why you're doing what you are doing, and being able to enjoy it and do it with a passion, and not just to gain marks at school because you have to be there. And if it's something you're interested in, you're never going to get bored of it as such as you might at school.
That is really, really fantastic. I think that is something that a lot of us might experience throughout our degree, is this change of perspective from exam-based learning to an actual, knowledge-based, wanting to better understand, the actual topic that we're studying for out of interest. What about you, Nihal?
Well, first of all, let me say I echo everything Nicole, Natasha, and Teigan said. In my home country, engineering school was actually 5 years, not 3 like here, right? So it goes basics, so math, physics, and all mechanics and all these things, and then you gradually go to the more of application stuff, like thermodynamic applications. So it's not pure science anymore, and I fairly enjoy the applied part of the engineering because I wanted so much to be an engineer. I wanted to graduate. But let me tell you something, engineering, beside it's a science, of course, but it's also skills. So math, physics, mechanics, material science, all these things you will need. So these are the things that you shouldn't discard at all. Like your, I don't know, math 3, when you learn about partial differential equations, all the systems in engineering are basically described by partial differential equations. So you need to be really good at that. Also, something else, I finished my material science module. I think I was in year 1. My first day of the job, they gave me like this sheet that had everything with, material science, like Youngest models and stuff like that. So yeah, I echo everything they said. It's very important that you have these skills under your belt, because these are the things that will carry on with you throughout your job. It's the basics of engineering, because from there you graduate to much larger projects and problems, and you can solve them using, the biggest problems can be actually solved using the simplest tools in engineering. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That is really fantastic to hear. I can definitely relate to every single thing that everyone has said so far. Perhaps moving on to a slightly different and more I wouldn't say practical, but a slightly different question regarding throughout your degree. How have you been able to receive sort of general support from the university throughout your engineering degrees? So both pastoral as well as financial. What have you been able to apply for scholarships or grants or funds, or any paid work opportunities to help support you throughout your degree? Perhaps starting off with Nihal.
So I'm on a scholarship here at Imperial, and Imperial is actually paying 25% of my fees, and the other 75 is paid by my the provider for my scholarship. So coming into the UK and literally having the whole degree online was quite hard, but we got like lots of support. We had like lots of session about welfare, and also like the director of our course, Professor Blunt. He's super, like, literally I send him a message and I say, I need to talk to you. He said, like, call me in 3 minutes, right? So he's been literally a father for all the people on the cohort, and not just him, my personal tutor, and I don't want to name names, but honestly everyone in the department was really understanding, and they were cheering for us. Like when we did the field development project, they came and they said, we know it's hard, we support you, we cheer for you, and we root for you. So yeah, we have had a lot of support when it comes to studying. Also when it came to career, obviously we cannot have any, I don't know, like career fair or anything. So instead Imperial brought all the companies, well, not all of them, but yeah, the majority of them online. We had sessions with them, we asked them how to apply, and yeah, we had lots of opportunities by just being at Imperial. So yeah.
That's really fantastic. Thank you, Nihal. It's great to hear that you've been, had lots of support, sort of pastorally, as well as financially, and in terms of your career progression. That is really great to hear, especially as an international student. There's always a few questions that you might have about how, a degree in a different country might be and different to what you're expecting. So that's really fantastic to hear. So maybe perhaps to Teigan and Nicole, who might be able to answer this a bit better, one of the questions from the Q&A, how has the pandemic impacted your degree or the student's degree? So starting off maybe with Nicole.
So I think the sort of main aspect that has changed because of the pandemic is the fieldwork sort of side of things, because obviously it hasn't been possible for us to go into the field. in big groups and sort of look at, you know, look at the rocks, and usually they would involve an international trip, which obviously is, you know, posed more difficulties during the pandemic. But I think one of the most important things to come out of the whole experience, and I know we didn't get fieldwork, and at the time, you know, that is quite disappointing. You know, we look forward to that. We really enjoy sort of going out in the field, but it has meant that there's been a rise in looking for alternatives and sort of trying to bring the field to the students, if that makes sense. And I think that that's something so important, and the work that's been done, well, both within the department and sort of at other universities as well, through sort of developing virtual fieldwork alternatives. And, you know, it's meant that we can sort of use real data collected from the field in sort of a virtual environment and explore it just as we would do in the field. Or alternatively, we could use sort of remote sensing data and that sort of thing to actually look at the geology. And I think that is really important for going forwards, for the accessibility of geoscience in general. You know, I think it has negative connotations in some respect of the fact that the fieldwork, you know, excludes a lot of people for various different reasons. But, you know, the rise in having virtual fieldwork alternatives, and I do hope that these continue after the pandemic, you know, the work that's been done on them, hopefully going forward, these can be implemented as well, and you know, are at least developed so that those that maybe love geology so much and, you know, really passionate about it don't miss out on the chances, you know, because they have these alternatives that they may be able to use, you know, to complement their degree. Because, you know, it is very important to look at things that we've, you know, learned in in the lectures and look at them in a practical sense. And I think for careers in geoscience, there are so many careers that don't require fieldwork. So, you know, being able to open up geoscience to include people that may have otherwise been excluded is pretty important. And, you know, one of the good things I think that has come out of the pandemic and the impact on our degree programs.
Thank you very much, Nicole. I guess it's really important to point out the accessibility and the inclusivity that it has. You know, the pandemic is, I guess, for good or for bad, being able to bring out, you know, and it's been a really big effort from Imperial College to make this work. So and as being part of someone who has been in this delivery of virtual field trips, I can definitely appreciate, you know, that kind of feedback. It's fantastic. What about you, Teigan? Do you have anything else to add?
Not hugely. I would second everything that Nicole said. I mean, what's come out of the virtual field trips, I mean, speaking for myself, I've been to Wales, Scotland, Sardinia, all from my bedroom where I'm sat now. And the speed at which the department were able to put these together and to such a high standard, I think that shows the skills that you learn from doing sort of geology and engineering can be applied in like situations you wouldn't expect yourself to be in, and everyone sort of being able to adapt to the remote delivery and still being able to effectively collaborate, whether that be through a problem set or understanding your lectures. I mean, it was disheartening at first to hear that you're not going to be allowed to go back to campus this year, but I think my degree and the things I've still been able to learn from my room, I'd say it's been excellent, really, and I am excited to go back next year. I'm not gonna lie, hopefully that will be able to happen, but I would say generally, pandemic wise, I've been very happy with how it's all gone.
That's really, really great to hear. So a sort of, again, slightly different question that I'd like to pose to the panel, starting off with Natasha, is what do you think has been the hardest thing about transitioning from school to an engineering degree? And, you know, and how have you overcome the challenge?
I think the hardest thing from going to school to like an engineering degree is adjusting to the teaching style. So it's more that you have to watch the lectures. We've been quite lucky because a lot of them were pre-recorded, so we could pause and write stuff down. But whereas in school, a lot of the material is being taught to you and then you write it down and they sort of focus on your development. It's more, universities seems to be a bit more about you listening, writing down the important parts, but the lecturer's not pausing at the points. You need to work out what's important for you to write down and what's not, because that's going to be different for everyone. And it's about you putting in the effort and time to go and talk to lecturers if you're struggling, which has been hard to do online. That I've emailed lecturers and they've been willing to help, and it's just being more of the focus of you having to action and develop your education rather than it being the teachers who seek you out.
Amazing, thank you. What about you, Nihal? How is your sort of transitions between, school to engineering to then industry to then back to, I guess, education been? What have you found the most challenging in all these different transitions? And how has your engineering degree helped you overcome these challenges?
Yeah, so to be completely honest with you, I don't remember when I moved from school to university because it was like 1,000 years ago, right? But I remember when I came back from the industry to university again. That was hard because on day-to-day basis, you just do your research, do everything, and you know how to do the work. You learn the process, when working, and yeah, everything was fine. But coming back from the industry and getting into the mindset of a student again, and that you have to submit reports and that you have to take notes and you have to memorize some things, that was hard. But it worked. I of course had the support from Imperial College. They were like, yeah, okay, the project will be easier for you, but then you have to learn a few things and you have to adapt to new things. So yeah, that was the hard part. But yeah, I think adapting to a new system in general is hard. Just getting out from your daily routine and just starting something new is in general hard, whether that was from industry to school or school to industry. So yeah, you'll get the hang of it after maybe like a month or two, depending on you. And you could, like, what I did is basically just I tried several strategies of like study for 20 minutes and take a break for 5 and then go back and study for 20 minutes and all these kind of stuff. So, but it's doable. Yeah, it's hard at the beginning, but it's doable.
What about you, Teigan?
I would say, I guess moving or change in general, whether that be just going from school to starting an engineering degree or moving away from home perhaps, or anything like that, is going to take time to settle into. But I guess mentioned earlier that all of the support offered by the department, whether that be through pastoral care, tutors and things like that, or the financial support to take that additional worry off you, all extremely helpful. I think perhaps we're thinking about women in engineering, perhaps being able to say, or if someone asks you what you do, rather than saying that you're at school, or then moving on to doing, I do a geology degree at Imperial, the typical reactions you get from that, like, oh, you must be really smart, or I think just, or you go to Imperial, like the stigma that comes with that, which you don't get when you're at school. And I don't know if any of the other panelists have anything to say about this, but I just think that being a woman in engineering, that the jump from just being an A-level student at school to then the stereotype from following something that you're passionate in, you shouldn't have to relay why you're doing that compared to A-levels.
See, and that is an incredibly good point. I guess, a lot of the times you end up thinking like you have to justify why you decided to follow a career in engineering, or why you're doing a career in geoscience. So that's really interesting. What made you choose that? It is something that I think, especially as women in engineering, we get posed a lot, that question, as opposed to perhaps men. But I think, as you said, is to remember that you're following something that you're passionate about, and that is enough. for you to be wanting to pursue a career in engineering. You're passionate about it, you enjoy it, and I guess that's why we're all here at Imperial. Nicole, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think I can definitely echo what Teigan was saying there. And I think for me, the sort of one of the hardest things transitioning from sort of A-levels on to do my degree was sort of learning that you don't actually have to be good at every single part of your degree, because it's so broad. In geoscience, it's just the nature of it is so broad and so interdisciplinary that there will be parts that you're going, kind of modules that you're sitting and you're thinking, oh my gosh, you know, like it's so hard and it's so out of depth, but actually you're learning so much from doing that and just being there. You know, you deserve to be there, even though you might worry and you might be thinking, oh gosh, you know, like I'm at Imperial and, you know, I'm really struggling. There's some things that just can't get my head around. Like, the department is so supportive in that sense that they're always there to help you. But I think that me kind of learning that I don't, you know, I still deserve a place in science, even though I may struggle sometimes. And, you know, but definitely what Teigan was saying, and that, you know, you don't have to look a certain way or act a certain way to sort of be a scientist and be an engineer, and sort of, you know, that even getting into Imperial or going in pursuing that career because you're passionate about it is definitely enough. And yeah, and I think the department has been great in helping me kind of learn that that's okay and that is very valid.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Yeah, that is something that I guess we tend to forget, right? You know, when we're in school, perhaps studying at GCSE level, or, you know, there will be subjects that we might not be as good at. You know, say I, for example, remember I was bad at history, and I never really questioned whether I was supposed to be in school just because I was bad at history. I had other subjects I was interested in and good at. And I guess the same applies throughout your degree. There are bits of the degree that you don't have to be good at everything, and you're still, you know, if you've earned your place at university, you're definitely supposed to be there. And the university system is geared towards helping you succeed as an engineer. You know, you're not going to university to fail. Everyone at university wants to see every student succeed. So I'm really glad to hear that you know, you all feel that Imperial is a really supportive environment. And we've had a question come in from the Q&A. So in general, there are much more men in engineering than women. Did you experience any gender inequality during your study? That's a very topical question, I guess, for the International Women in Engineering Day. Perhaps Nihal, would you like to tackle that question first?
Yeah, sure. So during my study, no. During my work, yes. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay. I guess, you know, this is sort of, you know, we want more women to stay in engineering, right? That is, you know, especially at a university environment, we, at least at Imperial College, want to promote you know, gender equality. We very much promote women in science, and we really want to push for, you know, an understanding that women have their space in engineering. You know, we're showcasing here fantastic engineering heroes from Imperial College, our students, and we would very much like to showcase how you know, we've got amazing women who are following careers in engineering. What about you, Natasha? Have you felt any of this? Have you experienced any gender inequality as, you know, going from school to university, or have you felt sort of at ease?
I felt at ease. So I went to an all-girls school, so I didn't necessarily have gender equality in science from school, but actually I'd say, like, especially Earth Sciences, I think it is quite 50-50 split. So there's quite an equal sort of, I found, like, a fair share of girls to boys. So it hasn't felt that different so far, to be honest. But I'm not sure what the actual ratios are.
Well, that's really great to hear, especially, you know, as someone who's moved from an all-girls school to you know, a mixed university environment. You know, if you're not feeling that, then that's a really positive thing to hear. You know, very different to what I'd hear from from parents, you know, who would say I was the only woman in my engineering class, and which sounds quite intimidating, to be very honest. Teigan or Nicole?
I would say that I've never experienced sort of any gender inequality in my 3 years at the department, and I think having, as Natasha mentioned, a very equal sort of split cohort, having similar-minded people to surround yourself with, and having like female lecturers and female postdoc researchers and PhD students at GTA, your lectures, I've never felt not at ease. And I think having sort of these people that are in roles above you, and it shouldn't be shocking that there are so many females. Like, I mean, passion is passion whether you're a male or a female to carry on with what you're doing. So having to, like, understanding that as a normal of being sort of not a minority just because being a female, I think very inclusive in the department regardless.
Thank you, Teigan. Do you have anything to add, Nicole?
I think I would just add that, I mean, I can agree that I haven't experienced any sort of gender inequality at my time in Imperial, because, like we've mentioned, it's not quite 50-50, but it is, you know, there's definitely kind of a good amount of women in earth science, especially undergraduate level. But sort of what I have noticed is that as you sort of go up, as you go towards masters and then PhD, and then actually at academia and sort of professor levels, and the percentage of women decreases throughout, you know, as you get further along. And I think but briefly what Nihal was saying again, like that maybe in industry that's a similar sort of thing. And I think it's so important that, you know, even at undergraduate level and lower down, you know, A levels, sort of GCSEs, that they have positive role models that, you know, you can see that it's so valid to be a woman and be interested in sort of science in general, or engineering, or, you know, being passionate about it. You know, we deserve our place. And I think, you know, that there will be issues. I'm sure that, you know, as you get further in, that there may be sort of issues that you face being a woman in STEM, but I think, you know, there's definitely sort of an element of, you know, we're really pushing for, you know, equality, and we're really working towards encouraging people, you know, women to pursue careers in STEM. And I think, you know, definitely role models are the way, but also talking about the issues and talking about sort of what issues might be encountered, and sort of understanding them going in, and definitely sort of, like Teigan was saying, being an undergraduate and seeing people that are PhD students or masters or lecturers and that are women in science and are incredibly successful. I think that gives you the confidence and motivation to keep pursuing STEM.
Thank you, Nicole. That is really fantastic. I think one of the most important things, definitely, I guess, Imperial College, is having sort of role models, you know, within the department that students at every level can look up to. So whether you're, and you know, first year undergrad, you know, seeing that you have, you know, masters, you know, MSci cohorts that have plenty of female, you know, members in the year group, same for the masters and PhD students. And, you know, every time you look up, you want to be able to see yourself in those positions. And it's really fantastic that at Imperial College we have lots of them available. So one of the questions that has come up in the Q&A is, what is the percentage of women in engineering today? And that is just sort of perhaps easiest if I go ahead to answer this. So according to the Society of Women Engineers, percentage of women who are engineers is only 13%, which is, I guess, to me, it was sort of a surprising answer, which I guess, you know, coming from all the answers from, you know, Natasha, Nicole, Teigan and Nihal, where in education we've found ourselves being, you know, surrounded by about approximately an equal spread. of men and women, it's really quite surprising that those numbers aren't coming through. And in 2019, out of those working in STEM in the UK, the sort of proportion that were women is 24%, which is still quite low. So, you know, we want to be able to have as many engineering women to stay within engineering, I guess, as in their careers. And I guess a sort of final question that I would like, you know, two questions I'd like to pose to all the panelists, and I guess we'll go round in turns just answering this, is, you know, knowing what you know now, would you go back and choose engineering, choose the degree that you're studying now? And what would be your message to your teenage self? You know, what would you have liked to hear when you were making your career choices? So perhaps start with Natasha.
I think the message to my teenage self would just be like, go with the guts. Like, there have been points where I was unsure as to what subjects I wanted to do, or I changed my mind. So I was initially going to do history instead of physics, and then I did change that on results day after GCSE. But I think it's just like knowing what you want to do, and it's okay if it changes, because I think it's just about following your passion, and if that changes, that's fine. You don't have to have a life plan. Like, I think a lot of things just happen that way, and it's having the confidence to just go with that. And I can't remember what the first question was.
It's knowing what you know now, would you choose your engineering career or your engineering degree? I
definitely think I would. I think I found it sort of more interesting than I expected. I will admit some of the rocks did initially scare me before not deciding degree, but I think they've definitely grown on me, and I think there's so many different aspects within it, and I think being immersed in the degree, I've definitely enjoyed it more than I would have imagined, and I don't think I wouldn't choose engineering. Like, it's really enjoyable, and I like the problem solving, and it suits me, and I'm happy with it.
That's really fantastic to hear, Natasha. Thank you very much. Nicole, so knowing what you know now, would you go back and choose engineering? And, you know, what's your message to your teenage self? You know, what would you have liked to hear when making your career choices?
I think I would definitely have, you know, picked geology still. Like, I've thoroughly loved, you know, science in general, and geology is a great way of sort of encompassing lots of different areas of science. Sort of message to my future self, I think, would be to sort of stay confident, stay motivated, you know, have more self-confidence, and, you know, that keep going sort of thing, and that you deserve to be there. You know, getting into Imperial for me was like such a huge thing, and at times I was almost like, wow, how did I get here? But I think knowing, you know, what I know now, you know, staying confident is, you know, really important. Staying motivated, you know, you deserve to be there. I think also, like, staying inquisitive, you know, ask questions. Lecturers, you know, from my experience, really like questions, because it shows that you're engaging with the material and that you're very passionate. And I think, you know, definitely just stay passionate, stay motivated, stay interested in the subject, and definitely keep your confidence.
Thank you, Nicole. Teigan?
Yeah, I would say there's no doubt that I would go back and change what I've done so far. I mean, I think some of the things I've learned in the past 3 years, I wouldn't change it for anything. I guess some advice for like teenage me, just because you've done a geology degree doesn't mean you will be a hard rock geologist. I mean, doing a degree in engineering gives you so many skills. I mean, your options are so wide at the end of your degree. You're not stuck to one pathway because of one choice you made when you were 17. But just doing something that you enjoy at that time is so important. And I think if you enjoy it, you're not going to regret it. I think forcing yourself into something that you think is good or that you're going to stick with forever, I think making a 20-year plan, it might work for some, but I think enjoyment is is a very high factor that you need to consider, and any sort of degree, your options are going to be so wide. And even now, 3 years down the line, I'm not set in stone where I could be in 5 years' time. So yeah, I think that's what I would say to teenage Teigan.
Thank you very much, Teigan. Nihal?
Yeah, so I started my university as a medical school student, and then I attended this mechanics lecture with one of my friends, and it was literally like music to my ears, so I decided to pursue engineering. So if I go back, I would definitely pursue engineering and not waste these 2 months in medical school. That's number one. For what I would say to my future self and my younger self, just step out of your comfort zone, because nothing grows there. And you're never too old or too young to set a goal and pursue it and succeed at it. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you very much, Nihal. Those are really, really fantastic words. And I guess everyone sort of touched on, different aspects about engineering, everything from following your passions to knowing that, you have a wide range of careers. And I guess, we want to emphasize that, most people who end up studying engineering end up loving it, because it's such a diverse field. There's always something out there that you might end up finding interesting. And if anything within engineering that doesn't interest you, it sets you up with a fantastic toolkit to go about and, getting started with anything else. I think, as I think Nihal previously mentioned, you do engineering, but you can end up going to write a magazine, or you can end up doing something completely different. Working as an engineer or switching fields within engineering, the possibilities are endless. So finally, I would just like to also highlight, we've had an amazing set of panelists, which I'd like to thank you very, very much for all your contributions. Thank you very much for all your amazing insights and telling us about your experiences and your aspirations. They really, really help, contribute, especially to Imperial College. All of you make this place a really, really great place to be an engineer at. To anyone who's watching, if you would like to hear more from, other fantastic women, both within Imperial College and outside, who pursued a career in STEM, both in research as well as industry, you can check out the Watson Forum, which is a YouTube channel containing loads of videos about women just chatting about their careers in engineering and STEM. So that's on YouTube, Watson Forum. You can also follow the Watson Forum on Instagram at Watson_forum, as well as Twitter at Watson Forum. This has been a really fantastic event celebrating our engineering heroes in the Department of Earth Science and Engineering. And thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.